So my name's Gordon Young. I'm the director of the Institute of Applied Psychology. And I came into this field 15 odd years ago. I initially came to NLP not to become a trainer. I came to NLP because I was suffering from anxiety. I was running a business, a relatively small business. I had up to 34 staff at its peak, and I was having panic attacks. I was struggling, and everyone I knew around me was struggling too. We're struggling with staff issues, we're struggling with our accounts, and people would come and offer me opportunities to grow the business further, and I literally would say, I can't take any more pressure. And I didn't know how to manage my own mind. So on the outside, I looked like a relatively successful business person. But on the inside, I wasn't running the business at all. It was running me, and it was literally running me into the ground. At 37, I think it was, the doctor said I had 2 years to live unless I changed what I was doing. And then my father died of a heart attack. And it was the slap in the face I needed. I went from being impervious, blood pressure, who knows what that is? I couldn't see it, I could feel it. So ultimately, to me, it wasn't a big deal. Well, my father dying of a heart attack really brought it home to me. And it was around about that time I met an NLP guy from overseas. And he just had a completely different way of looking at the world. And although I have to say I wasn't noted for my ability to listen to others and really take on advice, for whatever reason, I took on his, and he introduced me to a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of communicating. He actually came and helped me in my business for a period of time, and he made all sorts of advancements in the way we did things. And it was all simple little stuff. When I look back, it was very simple stuff, but it was a few percentage points difference that made all the difference. And that's what NLP is. It's the difference that makes the difference. The most effective people on the planet don't do things 80% different. They do things 10% different, 5% different, a few percentage points here and there, but it makes all the difference. So you see my qualifications in front of you. You should pay attention to the trainer's qualifications because you want to know, does this person know what they're talking about? NLP is an unregulated field. And quite frankly, you right now, even if you haven't done NLP, could set up an NLP school and claim that you teach NLP. There's nothing legally stopping you. The only thing that would stop you would be the market, where people start to recognize you didn't really know what you're talking about. Well, we see people come and go. Over the last 15 years, the front page of Google has changed over and over again. They come in, they do damage, and then they disappear again. They take people's money, and then at fair trading, those people win their money back, but they often don't get it back. So it's a bit of a minefield. If you're a little bit concerned about who to train with, I'm not surprised. I went through something similar when I was in your situation. I found a decent trainer. He's now no longer with us, unfortunately. And I really just went for my own personal development. Then I started to hear a lot about how I could be a better manager and a better leader, and how I introduced it into the workplace. And the outcomes I got was so much better. And it took a lot of pressure off. My staff became very well connected to me. I had gone through so many different people, turnover. And then once I learned NLP, I basically kept the same staff for 3 years until I sold that business. Then after I sold that business, I spent a couple of years deciding what am I going to do, because I was cashed up and I couldn't work anymore. I basically hadn't taken a week off in 10 plus years. And I thought, I'm going to go into this space, but if I'm going to go into this space, I need to go and be trained by the best in the world. I trained with everyone here, and I went off and I went to do different conferences, and I ended up at the Milton H. Erickson Foundation in Phoenix, Arizona. That is where NLP was born. In modeling, Milton H. Erickson, who was a psychiatrist, who was getting people to shift and change and adjust and become proactive and effective in very short space of time. I didn't even quite know what he was doing. And the NLP guys went and studied him. They studied other people as well, but you can see the Ericksonian influence in everything that they did. And so I went and trained with a lot of his direct students. And so in many ways, the NLP I teach is significantly different from the NLP you'll get anywhere else in this country. Why? Because it's probably closer to the source. It is, in many ways, we backfilled. The NLP I learned here had been kind of Chinese whispers. It kind of moved well away from its original. And in some cases, it wasn't that useful. It was useful enough that I felt there was value in it, but there were still gaps. And when I went to the Milton Erickson Foundation, I filled in those gaps. So I've headed up different associations. I've been the journal editor for hypnotherapy. I'm a trained hypnotherapist as well. And probably the other thing that might be important to you is that when a study of leadership came through, the largest study in the Southern Hemisphere, as far as I'm told, they went to different professions, different industries, and they sought out the person they deemed to be the leader in the field. And in this field, I was the one who was chosen. So what is the Institute of Applied Psychology? First of all, we're a registered training organisation. So we are government accredited. We provide accredited courses and non-accredited courses, but we are an accredited organisation. We also do corporate training. You see some of our clients here. We're more boutique rather than going after big stuff. And most of the time we're invited in. We don't go seeking these jobs. What do I intend for you tonight? Well, I want to give you a tiny taste test of the NLP experience. Kind of like a gelato spoon where you don't quite know what the flavor is. They give you that little spoon and you can just get a taste of it. Yeah, is that right? Because NLP basically is a massive subject. It's understanding all human capacity and potential. You can focus on the communication piece. You can focus on the personal change piece. You can focus on the rapport building and relationship building piece. There's so much that you will learn in NLP that I can't condense it into half an hour to an hour. I'll also, if you want, give you a heads up about the industry. And of course, your job is to assess me. You know, am I authentic? Am I knowledgeable? Do I know what I'm talking about? That's your job. Yeah, that's the same for you to decide. So our purpose at the Institute of Applied Psychology is to make a difference. Tonight, I really want to share something with you that really changed my life. And let me be clear about my bias. My bias is that NLP should be known by everyone. Every parent should know NLP. Every teenager should know NLP. Every teacher should know NLP. NLP is how you step into your potential. NLP will, if you really embrace it, and it is good training, because not all NLP is the same. This is a really important distinction. People generalize, I can get NLP anywhere, it's all the same. No, it really isn't. A lot of things are paraded around as NLP, and they're not NLP at all. The people who invented NLP, the trainers that I've had, would never say some of those things because they just kind of don't make sense. People love the idea of it, but they don't make sense. For me, it's important that I teach people NLP in a way that is effective for them and is demystified. I want to make sure you leave my training so much more effective, so much more capable, and so much happier. The ability to manage your own mind in a way that you can be more optimal more often, or just be more neutral more often, is a really powerful skill, and most people never learn it. We don't learn it at school. You know, I used to be a school teacher for about 3 years of my life, and I taught English and history. And when I look back, I kind of wonder, what was the point of most of what I was teaching when this is what kids need more than finding out about the bushrangers? That's nice, of course, but ultimately, what people need to learn is how to be the best version of themselves, how to learn to be effective human beings, empathetic human beings, people that are going to leave a legacy on this planet after they've gone. That's what's more important. So that's my purpose. I don't know what yours is. I don't know why you want to come to NLP or why you're even showing interest. Some of you might be coming for all sorts of different reasons, but I'm going to say if you look at the overall, you want your life to be better. That's really what you're looking for. That's what binds everyone on this webinar. A better life. So here's where I think most people are at. They will either come for personal development or leadership, professional development. In essence, this is about improving yourself. And the other option is to get a new career. So where you want to work with others. So become a coach, become a speaker, a thought leader, a therapist of some kind, a trainer of some kind. So you want to use it professionally to work with other people. So they're the combinations. So in personal development, things we typically deal with and we have NLP technique to deal with is something like the busy mind. How do you turn that off? How do you start sleeping at night again? Parenting. If you've got teenagers, helping them to ignore the thoughts in their head that don't serve them is a really important skill. The pivot point of our lives comes down to which thoughts and or feelings we pay attention to and which ones do we merely ignore. We have something like 50,000 thoughts a day, they say. Well, not all of them are useful. Not every feeling is worth listening to. So the question that becomes, which ones will you pay attention to and which ones will you ignore? Because that determines your behavior. Your history doesn't determine your behavior. Your ability to be discerning determines your life. Effective people, people with happy lives, ignore the critical voice. They'll still have it. They just ignore it. People who are racked and uncomfortable and always at odds with themselves listen to it. That is, in essence, the main distinction. People often come to improve their relationships. If they can't get the relationship they want, they wonder, what is it that they're doing? Well, they could be easily drawing the wrong person or being attracted to the wrong types of people. They want to develop more effective strategies in the area. And a lot of people particularly run a lot of anxiety and they want to come for more confidence. How do they feel better about themselves? In the leadership space, in the professional skills space, more personal effectiveness. How do they do more, be more productive with less time? How do they read other people? So one of the key components of being a good, effective communicator is how do you read others? Because your communication from an NLP perspective needs to start with the other person. How is this likely to land? How do I tailor my message so that that other person is likely to get it? Self-leadership is where you manage your own emotional state, where you can optimize it so that you're more effective in that moment. We all have moments of negativity, we all have moments where we're tired, but ultimately an NLP practitioner who's any worthy of salt should be able to say, no, I'm on, and just make that choice consistently. Then there's the really quite well-known influence of the communication style. We want to influence with integrity, but in essence, if you're going to be a good leader, you need to be able to be influential. You want to enlist people into your vision. You want to have better presentation skills or people management skills. So that skill set is so applicable across virtually every profession. Then, of course, NLP is a really fast track pathway into your own entrepreneurial space. creating your own enterprise, or maybe just changing career to a trainer, a coach, a speaker. Those are the three most common pathways. So if you're not where you want to be, the question I'm asking, and it's rhetorical, is what's preventing you? In my experience, it isn't circumstance. For most of you, circumstance is not the key determinant. It's your own thinking. It's your own habituated thinking style. And it's because you're thinking and visioning a very small game. I used to think very small. I came from a family, my mother and father were both cleaners, poor, relatively poor, poor education, immigrants. Ultimately, I was the first person in my entire extended family who, and even since then, who has ever gone to university. And it was such a big deal for my parents. I won a scholarship, one of, 6 scholarships in the state to go to university. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone. And they were so pleased that I'd made it to tertiary education. It was a massive step. But that was as much as they ever thought. They wanted me to stay a teacher because that was a job you couldn't be sacked from. And for me, I got into teaching, and then I decided this is not for me. I wanted to play a larger game. And working for the government, quite frankly, doesn't allow you to play a larger game. So I'm going to say, in my experience, success is largely determined, not wholly, but largely determined by the mindset you have, the determination and the willing to take responsibility for your outcomes. That's a crucial component. So how do most people live? Let me talk about what Neuro-Linguistic Programming is first. Well, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is a mouthful, NLP, is basically the most powerful behavioral science on the planet today, according to Psychology magazine. This is one group that we had many years ago. You might notice Jeff Hugel is standing there in the background, the Olympic swimmer. He came to see us a few 6 months before he made the return to the pool at 31 and won Commonwealth gold again. NLP is known well and truly by most world leaders, people in business, political. Anthony Robbins is NLP trained. He may call it neuro-associative conditioning now, but it is NLP. Tony Blair, Lie to Me is based on NLP principles. The Mentalist is based on a British entertainer who is also NLP trained. And of course, Richard Branson is very well across it. So why study NLP? Here's why. Because the most sophisticated structure in the known universe is inside your head. But the problem is we don't have a manual for it. It's like having an iPhone, yeah? I can tell you now, if I give my iPhone to my mother, who's almost 90, it ceases to be a smartphone and it becomes a Nokia because she doesn't know what any of these apps do. We're like smartphones. We have all this capacity. I don't think anyone I know actually uses the full capacity of their iPhone. Ultimately, when we don't know what we can do, we assume we can't do it. And that's a shame. We are all much more powerful than we think we are. It's just how do we access that? Well, this is where most people spend their time, on the treadmill of life. Now, that's an ad for a credit card, but ultimately I felt like I was on the treadmill of life. I couldn't get off. I had basically turned my head away and 10 years had gone by. You know, when people say to me, I just fell into this career, I feel terrible for them. And now it's too late for them to change. At least that's what they often tell me. Well, it isn't. I came into this field at 45. Here's the truth of it. All success is determined not by your qualifications or your intelligence, but by the efficacy of your unconscious patterns. What do you do at the unconscious level? How do you respond to things? Do you lean towards optimism or pessimism? Your intelligence has nothing to do with that. You can have 3 PhDs and still be a pessimist. But when you think about it, being a pessimist makes no sense. To always look for the negative in any situation and make up stories in your mind, your imagination, about how things are going to go pear-shaped, that is not a smart thing to do, especially when you're wrong 90+% of the time. Because for most pessimists, and the vast majority of the population leans slightly or mildly towards pessimism, most things they worry about never happen. That makes no sense. So whether we're talking about personal or professional life, it's just context. Ultimately, you take your unconscious patterns to work. If you're risk adverse and you're now the department head, that department is now risk adverse. You get half a dozen risk adverse people running up departments, that company is risk adverse. So the idea that there's a personal you and a professional you, yes, there's a veneer you put on, but ultimately your patterning is your patterning. And what's important is you start to recognize your patterning and adjust it where it's not working for you. Most of the time, this is so unconscious to us that we have no idea we're even doing it. This is a quote from the guy who runs Mind Valley. He says, if you want to be an accountant, study accountancy. If you want to be successful, study success. And that makes total sense to me. NLP is the study of success, and you can apply it to virtually any area of your life. We have athletes, Olympic athletes, world champions in the room sometimes. We have CEOs of large companies. We've had university professors in the room. It doesn't matter what field of study, what field of endeavor you're in. NLP will make you better because it's not just going to show you what others, more successful people do than you. It's going to show you where you're successful, how you're unconsciously coming up with effective strategies so you can then work them out and then apply them more deliberately in other areas of your life. So you're not just going to find out what you could do differently, you're going to find out what you could do more of that's effective in your life. So if you're an aspiring manager or you aspire to be a manager, NLP is going to give you a winning competitive edge. The truth is, at the end of the day, no one's going to be highly successful by themselves. You need to enlist others into your vision. That means you need to be a good communicator. You need to initiate action by yourself. You have to manage your own emotional state to be optimal. You have to be able to network, build relations, build teams, and be self-disciplined. If you can't do all that by yourself on call right now, then NLP is for you. Ultimately, we are interdependent, we're not independent. NLP will teach you to be more productive in less time, more influential as a manager or team member, more able to recognize your own patterns and responses, and you can step back from them and review. One of the keys is to not respond the way you habitually respond, but to ask yourself, what is the most useful response I can deliver here? To be able to step back from whatever angst or annoyance, whatever you're coming up with, to step back and focus on outcome is a really important skill. You want to be more confident so you can run your own mind and choose your frame of mind, and more effectively read and predict the behavior of others. Once you understand human behavior, a lot of what people do is actually very predictable. It often surprises me just how little people know as managers about what people do. And I often when I get brought into companies, I often get really quite surprised at how well they do given their lack of knowledge. It also helps you upskill. You can become a key person of influence. You can learn what specific language to use to hit the target because you need to adjust it according to the person. Avoid those awkward misunderstandings and irritants and add that kind of magic touch to every relationship. You can learn how to be charismatic. There is a model in NLP where they studied Mandela, Luther King, even Jesus was included in his speeches about what makes someone charismatic. And there's a formula to it. So you can build agreement and be truly heard by people. And improve your own performance. Stop procrastinating, stop stressing, stop overwhelm. It's referred to as effortless discipline. And negotiate more effectively. I've saved probably close to $50,000 that I could rattle off the top of my head through learning negotiation skills based on NLP. One thing about language is that you need to communicate with a listener in mind. So let me demonstrate how I can create pictures inside your head. This is an important understanding if you want to be an effective communicator. I don't know where you are now, but I'm guessing there was an adjoining room or a corridor that led to where you are. So if you remember back to coming through that corridor area, did you see the clown that was there? Now, you should be saying there was no clown there unless you're in a circus right now. But I've got a clown in your head right now, and I can adjust the clown anytime I like. You can't help but process what I'm saying through pictures. So if I said, was the clown juggling when you went past? Notice what you've done. Was a clown making balloon animals? Again, notice what you've done. By the time I finish the sentence, you're there. In essence, I'm putting pictures into your head. Now, the truth is, you're putting pictures into your head based on what I'm saying. But I know what I'm doing. Now, here's the thing that's kind of tricky. If you look back at the image of the clown, let's say juggling, notice the quality of that image. The movie you're running inside your head of the clown juggling in that corridor or adjoining room area, if you were to break it down, you'll notice that you've taken a complete fabrication of some kind and spliced it perfectly into your recollection of that corridor area. It's a fabrication, but it is so lifelike that your brain can't tell the difference between what you imagine and what you actually remember. This is wonderful for creativity. You can imagine a building where there isn't one. You can design it in your head. The opera house was designed in someone's head before it was ever put onto paper and then translated into real structure. The downside is when you're imagining that meeting going pear-shaped later this week, you live it as if it's happening because you can imagine the office, you can imagine these people, the way they're dressed, their voices, you can imagine them saying horrible things to you. You can imagine the feeling of dismay, and none of it's actually happened. In many cases, it's almost never going to happen. It just doesn't happen that way. This is the basic underpinning to anxiety and anything related to anxiety. You make stuff up in your head and then you respond to it because your imagination is more powerful than the reality. This is the important understanding, and every child needs to know this. We have the highest teenage suicide rate in the world because people have never taught these kids that they don't have to respond to everything inside their head, that most of what they're anxious about, what they're scared of, doesn't actually exist in the real world. It's important that we learn to run our own minds because they are so powerful. If you want to be less stressed and more confident, if you want a transformational experience, then this is what NLP is. Lots of different rapid change techniques that just help you in a couple of minutes take back control. That's what it's all about. We can teach you how to silence the critical, negative, or just a busy voice. That's a technique we have on day 3 or 4. Clean up your own negativity and pessimism so you don't pass it on to your kids. Learn how to optimize your own emotional state and show others how to do the same. Build better listening skills. And we talk about this as third ear. And third ear is where you're hearing what is presupposed by what the person says. What must they believe to be true for them to say that? And then you can deal with the heart of the matter. How to influence and choose your communication style to be more reliable in the way it lands. How do you be your best? And how do you be Teflon? We show you all these little mind hacks that help you be Teflon to the slings and arrows and the pressures that people try to put on you, so that, someone can throw abuse at you, but whether you catch it or not, whether you let it land or not, that's a whole other thing. That's your choice. They don't get to decide to make it personal. Only you can do that. And you can develop what we call wise mind, an integrated head-heart approach. And negotiate more effectively, cars, furniture, even houses. And become someone that others admire. There was a time in my life where, if I'm going to be honest, people did not come to me for advice. Let's be just very simple about that. I wasn't considered wise. But now I speak internationally on things like anxiety. Now I teach people different forms of NLP, but also hypnotherapy and a range of other different topic areas. And I'm considered a bit of an expert in these spaces, but there was a time when I knew nothing about it. I've learnt this. There's nothing special about me. I just pursued it. That's really the difference. And my story can be yours. My life completely changed when I really took on NLP. My financial situation completely changed. My happiness changed enormously. And my career changed enormously. Every aspect of my life changed. And I started creating my own future in a way that I didn't know how to do it before. So I owe a lot to NLP, and I'm seeking to pass on the gift to others. Here's the truth. If you don't run your own mind, it will run you. And when I say it, I mean all of your previous conditioning. You're the source of all your future success. And we are driven by these unconscious patterns. So unless you clean up those unconscious patterns, they're running 24/7. You can consciously think you're in charge, but you have to be really present before you can interrupt those things. You need to change them at the unconscious level, and NLP does that. So let me give an example. Here's a thought for you. You control much more than you think you do. So let's just play for a moment. So if you were to lean down and look down on the ground and slouch over and think about something that annoys or frustrates you, so just do that and give it a rating out of 10 for how annoying it is for you now. 10 being a lot, 1 being indifferent. Just get that. And then straighten right up, back really straight, and cast your eyes above the horizon and try to run the same negative thought. Now, you don't run thoughts in your head. You run them in space in front of you. You project them out. If you can't run that negativity in the same way above the horizon, there's a reason for that. We have a nervous system that precludes you from doing that. In fact, if I ask you to smile, really big smile, and then run the negativity, your smile will want to pull out because you can't run negativity and smile. So your brain will have to say, well, which way are we going to go here? I can't do both. And so what you hopefully are already starting to learn is that you have conscious little interruptions you can run, that if you understand the system, You can start to override anything that goes on inside of you. Maybe let's do another one. So if you tend to have a critical voice or an angry voice or a busy voice, whatever else it is, just notice where it comes from. Now, for most people, it's going to be in your head. It could come from the chest or stomach, but most people, it comes from the head. And how can it come from the chest or stomach? Well, the truth is the voice inside your head is a complete fabrication. The one place it doesn't come from is here, because that's your real voice. I've never had someone say it comes from here. So the voice inside your head that's running commentary on what I'm saying right now is a fabrication. It's the way you communicate with yourself. But notice where it comes from. Now, turn it up, make it louder. If you're able to do that, then that means you control it. That's good news. Now, move it down onto the shoulder and just hear it in one ear. And then move it down onto the elbow. And then down to the wrist. And now down into the little fingernail of your little finger. Now, even if you're saying the same thing, the likelihood is that that's nowhere near as powerful as it was, because now we've dissociated it. We've moved it away. And so your brain can't run it the same way it was doing before. Now, I'm not going to continue the whole process, but in essence, what did you just learn? People think their internal dialogue is the bane of their existence sometimes. So many people, what they want ultimately is inner peace, and they don't think they're ever going to get it. You know, people go for a 10-day vipassana of silence just to try and get that quiet. Well, I can show you how to do it in 5 minutes. In essence, the key here is that you control much more than most people on the planet ever think you do. And that is the difference between the most successful people on the planet and the people who are basically fairly mediocre. The people who are mediocre are always talking about what other things outside of them control, how they controlled by other things. The people who are exceptional are looking to claw back control of anything around them. How do they get to influence the situation? How do they get to control what they can? And in some cases, just let go of what can't. That's the key difference. They don't get caught up in stuff. Excuse me. They move through it. So I just got something caught in my throat. So if you want a new career, then again, you can get a massive return on this. You can become someone in the personal development field, like I did. You can become a coach, a trainer. We give you the whole course that will do these things. A thought leader. You can become inspiring. You can basically kiss your 9 to 5 goodbye. You can learn how to dream big and live big. We've done this over and over again. So many of our students have become significant players in their area of choice. So NLP offers you an advanced goal-setting approach too. We added something called clever outcomes, which is our particular trademark. But it is, some people have said, the most advanced goal-setting method there is. You'll learn something called strategic power questioning in a coaching realm. So that's how you drill down to the core of the issue very, very quickly. You'll have all these little techniques you could even use over the phone with someone just to help people get their lives back into charge and in essence, get them out of their own way. And we can help you develop that coaching persona because you need to live what you preach. You need to be the person who is a coach, not just that's what you do. You need to do what you say and say what you do. You need to walk your talk. And learn and pass on to others performance-enhancing rituals. So the Diploma of NLP and Strategic Coaching in total is 20 days. And it's across about an 8-month period. So there's a lot of elements of online as well. but we'll give you the full coaching setup so you can actually start your business. We'll actually tack on, if you want, a 30 days to an epic launch, which is how do we get you online, get you up a website, and teach you how to set up business. Because again, we can teach you a lot about this, but until you can action things out in the real world, it doesn't really mean a lot. So what's the offering we have here? NLP practitioner is the first level. Now, there's lots of different companies that talk about NLP practitioner. We almost think we shouldn't use that term, but it's the one that's well known. But it would be a mistake to think that all NLP practitioners are roughly the same. They're not. There'll be some overlaps, but they're definitely not the same. Ours is 8 days. It's the precursor to the NLP Master Practitioner. That NLP Master Practitioner is the more advanced. So between those two courses, you get the full NLP suite. Then you can tack on either presentations or coaching, and that gives you a diploma of NLP in coaching. Or you can add on again both the coaching and the presentation skills, and that would give you a diploma of NLP leadership and coaching. So those diplomas are basically a combination of those courses. And really effective people have come through our door and talk about us in these ways. The Beyond NLP event, which is the NLP name within the Institute of Applied Psychology. One of the best investments you'll ever likely to make in yourself or your organisation. This is Shelley Taylor-Smith, world marathon swimming champion 7 years in a row. She used to do triple crossings of the channel. Bill O'Hanlon has been a guest on Oprah, talks about us as doing it with compassion and integrity. He's an American visitor to our shores, written 36 books on change, one of the world's leading experts in the space. Peter Maguire is a Sky business consultant. They will bring him in when they want to know why Putin's doing what he's doing. He has been coming every year in January just to recharge and top up because he does live television constantly. He will be on Sydney television, and then 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, he's on with Singapore. 20 minutes later, again, he's on with Hong Kong. He's across the globe with this type of work, and he's been trained by the very best on the planet. He's a graduate of the Warburton Business School, the supposedly the best business school in the world, and he talks about us in the same vein. So no matter how good you are, NLP will make you better. I show you these types of people because I want to show you that these people know their stuff. They know what good training is. These are the type of people you could meet at the training. In many cases, you'd never meet them anywhere else. But these people come and they are of the view that it's worthwhile. And here's what makes this even more important in my view. There's a CEDA report. Well, let me start here. 84% of people are dissatisfied in their jobs, according to a Gallup poll. 40% of Australians, 2 out of 5, will end up having a mental illness at some point in their life, according to the Australian Psychological Society. As I said before, we have the highest teenage suicide rate in the world. This is appalling. And why is it so appalling? Because parents and teenagers have no idea about how their mind works. They have no idea that they don't have to listen to a thought or a feeling. They have no idea that things are transient and they don't last. And just because they're feeling something does not mean they have to pay attention to it. When you're in control of your own mind, that type of problem isn't a problem. Because good times will pass and bad times will pass. Everything passes. But you don't want to take the ultimate opt-out because you're going through a tough time. And then there's this. This is the thing that kind of concerned me. Not really for me too much, but for others. Because I don't work for anyone else. A CEDA report, Commission for Economic Development Australia, 2015, stated that 40%, 5 million current Australian jobs will be gone to overseas or to technology by 2025. That means a lot of dislocation and a lot of flux, a lot of people retrenched. And the old idea that other jobs will replace them, they're not really confident that's going to happen that way. And these are not working class jobs. You know, someone still has to clean up at the food court at the mall. But if you can work remotely at times, then they can work from India. These are professional jobs. The whole accountancy space is in trouble. A lot of financial services are in trouble. A lot of what most people think is a safe blue-collar job will not exist by 2025. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's already started. The big banks have been stripping people back, 5,000 at a time. Telstra, Qantas, it's happening all around us. That means a lot of dislocation, a lot of people reliant on an income from someone else are not going to know what to do. I can help those people. You might end up being a coach that helps those people. You may end up being one of these people, but if you've got something to fall back on, then you're not going to suffer the way others have. There has never been a better time in history to set up your own enterprise, as evidenced by Seth Godin. Now, I don't know if you know who Seth Godin is. He's a marketer, but he's a bit of visionary. And I like what he's got to say here. I saw this video roughly the same time I saw that report, and just look what he has to say. I think it's very positive.
2012. Here's the thing. The recession is a forever recession. There's a cyclical recession that comes and goes, but there's this other thing, and it's the end of the industrial age. It lasted for 80 years. For 80 years, you got a job, you did what you were told, you retired. And good people could make above average pay for average work. And it ended. And so 2012 is not going to be more of the same. It's going to be worse of the same in that the industrial age is going away and a new thing is going to take its place.
It doesn't strike me as we're a group of people who are prepared for this new thing yet.
Totally unprepared. Absolutely. Because our schools, our systems, our retirement things, our taxes are all built around this notion of doing what you're told. And now we don't know what to do because it's a revolution.
And so what do you think we should do?
Pick yourself. Don't wait for someone to pick you. If you have a book, you don't need a publisher to pick you. You can publish it yourself. If you want to write, write. If you want to sing, sing. If you want to start a movement, start a movement. But this shift is that it doesn't matter whether you own a building or own a big company. You can now make an impact if you want to.
Well, there was this idea that people think the government owes them a job, or at least owes them the opportunity to get a job. Has that changed?
Well, I think the thinking hasn't changed at all, because that's what we grew up to believe, that this notion of you pay your taxes and you do what you're told and there's a pension and a safety net is hardwired in. Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, all those guys built it into the system. And now it's starting to crumble and the jobs are moving. There's a McDonald's in California. You pull into the drive-thru and you say your order and you can see the guy 12 feet away who's flipping burgers. You're not talking to him. It goes over TCP/IP through the internet and a satellite to someone in South Dakota who's making 12 cents less an hour, who types in what you said and back over because they could save 12 cents doing that. So there's this race to the bottom. And if you're going to say, I'm an average guy doing average work, we'll find someone cheaper than you.
But is it that there was a revolution, or is it that corporations felt like they had an unfettered path?
Yeah, capitalism has always needed boundaries. And so if you got people racing, and if the boundaries get loosened, they're going to race faster. The alternative, though, which I'm much more interested in, is the race to the top. So while there's people who are racing to the bottom, there's...
What's race to the bottom? What is that?
Yeah, the race to the bottom is, how do we get cheaper? How does everything get cheaper? More Walmarts, more Targets, more stuff made by people who are getting paid ever less from cheaper materials, cheaper services, whatever. The problem with the race to the bottom is you might win, which really sucks, right?
Totally.
The alternative is to race to the top. And some people are getting to race to the top because the internet and this revolutionary connection engine that we're all living with says if you can figure out how to do something interesting or unique or noteworthy, people will find you and pay you extra because you're not like everyone else but cheaper. You're different than everyone and more expensive.
Yeah, but the whole system needs to change.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you really,
Like it or not, it's all turning upside down.
is this one of the things like the record business where regardless of how we feel, it's going to change? Do you think it will change?
Yeah. So the record business was perfect, George, in 1972. Everything about it was perfect. Rolling Stone magazine, American Top 40, Billboard.
Right to the late mid-90s,
Yeah, then
right? Yeah.
gone all at once. More music now by more musicians, listened to more often by more people. All of that's great, but the industry that made it, gone. And so the same thing is going to happen to Canadian Tire, and the same thing is going to happen to Tim Hortons, and the same thing is going to happen to the local hotel and everybody else. They're either going to have to choose that we're just like everyone else, but a little cheaper, or they're going to have to say we're the only one. Like,
So I don't know about you, but that gave me heart. The truth is, there's never been a time in history, a better time in history, where you can make an impact without having the big building, without having all the staff. You can set it up yourself online, and you can make something happen. You could coach someone in some area. I don't know what skill sets you have, but do you have something that other people want? A skill, a talent. Can you package it up into something? And if you don't have it, how do you acquire something that other people want, that they're willing to pay for? That's in this instance. In the future, what you need to be is not qualified necessarily, but employable. How do you become more employable? And that's whether you run your own enterprise and people will employ your services, or you're working for someone else. How do you become more flexible, more agile, more employable? That's, I think, the key here. NLP gives you a fast track to being able to pick yourself, to give yourself options, to make your own life. You know, someone wise once said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And for me, NLP gave me that opportunity. I didn't have that before. As much as I thought I did, I really didn't.